best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Well, hey there, it's Perch. Yeah. I don't know, I'm trying different intros. Anyway, let's see. We got Comic Greatness. A viewer writes in saying, hey, Perch, I want to get your take on something. What separates a decent, good, or legendary comic? Why can't legendary creators keep on making good comics? Do creators only have one or two great stories in them? Yeah, maybe. Claremont isn't as good as he used to be. Bendis has been on a downward spiral for a while now. However, they at least have some good to great stories in them. Some never get beyond mediocre good. Some writers never get beyond mediocre or even bad. Kind of the same thing. That sentence was repeating itself. But why is that? Is it talent, uniqueness, being first, something else? Hope to hear from you soon. All right. Well, this is a good question, and I think we need to open it up to the audience. So all of you guys stop listening to the video now and just start writing up. What separates good, as they say, like mediocre, good to great? There's a statement I think I mentioned in another video right now. It's going around a lot of companies and consultancies. If you want to appear really, really cool, really trendy the next time in your business, just try this out. Now, you got to practice a little bit so you don't sound like a tool when you're saying it. But there's two things that I hear a lot. And one is, we got to get the flywheel running for our business. The flywheel equals a number of things that you just repeat in circular motion. Like, you identify the problem and then you solve the problem and then you deploy the problem and then you identify the problem again. And you have this flywheel. It's how a lot of corporate executives think that they're good fishing people. When really the reality is, if they're picking up anything other than a golf club, it's a martini. But the other one, and the one that's relevant to this video, is going from good to great. And this is this phrase that's being used a lot in consultancies to say, it's pretty clever because it's a way of saying, hey, you want to get better. But it gives people a warm feeling like, hey, you guys are doing good, but you can do great. Everybody's like, ooh, I am doing good. Well, thank you. I could go from good to great. Yeah, that's a way of saying I need to improve without making me feel bad in the process. That's nice of you. Thank you, consultant man. Here's $1.5 million. I appreciate it. That's how a lot of this goes. Going from good to great. So, with comics, I think you have, let's just say garbage, mediocre, good, and great. So what separates those things? How does a comic go from good to great? And why is it? So Chris Claremont's a good example. I obviously like Chris Claremont a lot, talked about him a lot. I enjoyed his Uncanny X-Men run. I enjoyed his Fantastic Four run that not a lot of people enjoyed. And there's a lot of Chris Claremont that I didn't enjoy. And today, Claremont will every now and then come in to write a comic, and it's not great. And they're usually not terribly good either. And it pains me to say it because I like Claremont, but I'm reading his Gambit series, and it's like, it is not ideal. This is not ideal, this comic. Now, we could say it probably holds up better than some of the terrible books out there, but it seems like a pretty kind of deep wound to say, Claremont, the comic's not very good, but at least it's better than whatever like Charlie Jane Andrews is doing over in New Mutants. I mean, like, okay, it's kind of like saying, this, that my arm got lopped off, but at least I didn't grind up my testicles in the process. I mean, that's like, that analogy is more on the nose than I mean it to be, but sorry for that. Anyway, how do writers only have a couple good stories in them? I think kind of yes, by the way. I do have a feeling there's certainly some writers who have infinite good stories. There's good ideas, good observation, other things. There's other people who have like one or two really great concepts in their mind, and that's it. That's all they've got. And so they can write, they can get those ultimately into a comic and put it out there. Or maybe, and to be honest, we often talk about how editors screw things up. There is also the case where editors make it better. I think that John Ridley has done a couple comics for DC where I feel like he got a good editor that actually cranked out a pretty good story. The Nerdette was saying the Gotham PD story Set the Blue Wall, that was a pretty damn good comic. And then you read his like I Am Batman, and it's like, ugh. I mean, just what happened? Now it's possible that as a writer, he just fell off the, completely fell off the mark, and he had one good idea and he used it up for this one story and then couldn't come up with any others. But it's more likely that, an editor came in and actually steered him away from his bad ideas and got him into a place where they can construct a good story. So I think that's part of it. By the way, as we're talking about some of these writers who are not as good, I think the editorial is different. I mean, I might argue when Chris Claremont was doing his work, back in the day on X-Men, he probably had he definitely had a pretty stellar group of editors. But today, who's editing Claremont stuff? And is it the same quality of person that can do that? And by the way, I don't know also if, and I would say it's probably likely, Claremont's gotten older. He knows he's a legend in the field, so maybe his ability to take direction is a lot lower. Maybe he's phoning it in because he's not on a regular title he has to live with. I don't know, but definitely the work has got worse. But for me, what takes a comic from kind of mediocre to good to great, kind of in that process, is a comic that brings a combination of elements. It brings uniqueness. It's a story or an angle or a twist or a plot, that I haven't seen before, or maybe it is something I've seen before, but it's told as a kind of a unique, aspect to it. It's where the characterization is so spot on. Here's one thing that for me almost always indicates a great comic. It's when if I forget what's drawn on the panel and I'm just reading the word balloons, I know exactly who's talking from only reading the word balloons and not looking at the picture. Obviously in comics you want to look at the picture, but this is one of the biggest problems I feel in comics right now, is that the narration, either the inner monologue or what the character is doing, we've lost the uniqueness of the character. I was reading Jerry Duggan's Iron Man, and he has a little battle against Fee Long at the stock market and other thing. And it's not an engaging comic. And part of the problem is it doesn't sound like Tony Stark. It could be anyone who's in that. It could be, you could almost just as easily substitute for Hawkeye or Captain America would read about the same. And then the villain reads about the same. I like that. This is my problem with a lot of Bendis' stuff. He leaned too hard into things and he lost his ability to actually have unique character voices coming out through the comic. And so to me, if the character voices come through, if the uniqueness of the person talking comes through, I almost always find I enjoy that comic a lot more, and I would usually classify it as great. The other thing that I think would qualify something as a great comic, and ultimately it's all the storytelling, is does this comic tell a story that is complete, meaning, I feel like I got resolution, I feel like I got an arc, I didn't feel like I got a snippet of something, but it also sets up a bigger world, meaning, this like Craven's Last Hunt is an example of an amazing comic. And in this comic, it's a fairly confined comic. You have Craven, you have Spider-Man, you have Mary Jane, you have Vermin, and that's about it for our cast of characters. The world is actually quite small. And, if you think about it in kind of a weird way, the world gets smaller through Craven's suicide at the end of that story. But when you read it, you feel kind of the expanse of the Spider-Man universe. You feel all the possibilities. You feel the claustrophobia of the situation he's in. But it feels like a bigger story, even though it clearly has a beginning, middle, and end. Even though when you read that thing, it's over, but it leaves you with a lingering, wonderings about, is this going to cause, traumatic stress with Peter? How does he feel about a villain getting one up on him? What does Craven's legacy mean? And how did he arrive here? You wind up with a lot of thoughts following the comic that follow you. And I think what makes a great comic is one where, it nails the voices of the characters and it leads you with more. Even if the story's over, it still leaves you with more thoughts, more ideas, more deeper insights into the characters. It's great stuff. And by the way, that doesn't mean the comic needs to be all serious. You could do a jokey, funny comic and still meet those criteria. You could have this is one reason why I did like Next Wave by Warren Ellis back in the day, because it was funny and it was silly and it was in many cases took the characters completely outside of continuity. But it also felt like there's more. There's more to this world. You found yourself thinking about these jokes, thinking about how the characters interact. It left you with a bigger, more whole experience. And that is what, to me, makes a great comic. So maybe that answers your question. I don't know. How about you? So dear listener, let me know your thoughts on all these, on what takes a comic from good to great. Do creators only have a couple good stories in them? What happens if a creator once did a great comic, but then now phones it in, like what, or, it's just not as good? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.